Namaste everyone, this is me Deepthi J. Verma and you're watching Beyond the Headlines. You must have seen a trending hashtag this week, uninstall Hotstar. This happened soon after the release of an OTT magnum opus, The Empire, which claims to be India's answer to Game of Thrones. The streaming show is adapted from Alex Rutherford's 6-book series called Empire of the Mughals and tells the story of Emperor Babur. Published from 2009 to 2015, the novels consist of Raiders from the North, Brothers at War, Ruler of the World, The Tainted Throne, The Serpent's Tooth, and Traitors in the Shadows. Raiders from the North explores Babur, a complicated emperor, and his constant struggle of living up to Timur's legacy. In Brothers at War, the narrative jumps to 1530, where Humayun is ruling for over 1,000 miles. Ruler of the World obviously has Akbar at its center. Often hailed as one of the most powerful rulers, he was also known to be the most benevolent and tolerant of the lot. In Book 4, The Tainted Throne, the action shifts to 1606, where Jahangir is the ruler, and the last book, Traitors in the Shadows, Aurangzeb sits on the throne, and as the title suggests, his cruelty has given birth to enemies lurking in the shadows, everywhere, making him even more suspicious and dangerous. The series that displays a humane side to the otherwise genocidal and eccentric Babur has sparked off a debate between netizens if we Indians tend to glorify Mughals in popular cinema and television. From the time of Mughal-e-Azam, which continues to be one of Indian cinema's most iconic films, to Taj Mahal and Jodha Akbar, we have seen Indian filmmakers' obsession with the grandeur and larger-than-life portrayal of the era. It was only recently that the narrative shifted a bit. Now people of India are questioning this obsession. They are questioning this glorification and this continuous highlighting of this part of Bharat's history. So much so that earlier this week, a paragraph on the IT ministry site describing the Mughal Empire as among the greatest ever was deleted when complaints tagging the Ministry of Culture were raised on social media. Even as the ministry distanced itself from the issue, it has now said that it will work with agencies to accurately portray the events. While most people feel that Mughals are over-glorified, there are also others, like director Kabir Khan, who thinks the popular narrative is a bit too harsh against both historical evidence and Mughals. He finds demonizing Mughals as problematic and instead of seeing them as villains, views them as the original nation builders. But is this once again a whitewashing of the popular narrative by intellectual snobbery? The other end of the conversation was stirred by lyricist Manoj Muntashir, who made a controversial Twitter post in which he called Mughal rulers like Akbar, Humayun and Jahangir dacoits and said that India has been brainwashed into naming our roads after them and celebrating them. Discussing his video, Who Are Your Ancestors, on one of the television channel interviews, Muntashir also said that India's medieval history is deliberately colored by the left and 90% of it has been written by left-wing historians. So in this week's episode of Beyond the Headlines, let's discuss whether the Mughal era should be hailed for its contribution to the arts, culture and architecture of India, or seen for its plundering, mass conversions, racism and genocides. Were Mughals truly nation builders or actually destroyers of an ancient civilization? So here are some basic things we all need to know. The Mughal Empire was established by Babur in 1526 by defeating Ibrahim Lodi in the First Battle of Panipat. Most of the Mughal rulers were either Turks or Sunni Muslims. Babur was succeeded by Humayun, who was followed by Akbar, then Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and finally Aurangzeb. In the 1st century AD, India's share in the global GDP was 32.9%. When the Mughals arrived in 1500 AD, it went further down to 24.5%, and at the end of Akbar's rule in 1600 AD, it was just 22.6%. India was never completely under the Mughals. Even at the time of death of Akbar, which Vijayanagar, Deccan, Khandesh, Bijaypur, Ahmednagar were independent towards the south, and so was the region in the northeast. The relationship between the people of Hindustan and the Mughals always remained that of the conquered and the conqueror. The welfare schemes were minimal, and even when one looks at the so-called Mughal architecture, it was primarily egoistic in nature, as it consists mostly of tombs and palaces for emperors, unlike Europe of the time, where architecture and even like in the Maurya or Gupta period, that boasts of basic civic amenities and public places. Fifth, the Mughals were no more secular than the Afghans that preceded them. Even the most secular of them, Akbar, while he married in the families of Hindu kings, most famous being his marriage to Jodha, it was mostly done out of political need. History does not tell us of any of children of Hindu wives of Akbar who were raised as Hindu. In fact, Akbar did not raise any of his descendants as Hindu, and in 2 generations gave rise to one of the most fanatic emperor India had ever seen in Aurangzeb. Sixth, Akbar is often compared with Emperor Ashoka in greatness. Now, historians John S. Hoyland and S.N. Banerjee do not agree with this comparison. In one of their pieces, they write, Akbar's greed for conquest and glory and his lack of sincerity form a marked contrast to Ashoka's paternal rule, genuine self-control, and spiritual ambition. In fact, if one were to look at numbers of the court nobles, 70% were foreigners, which meant Turks, Persians, and Afghans. Of the remaining 30% who were Indians, more than 50% were Muslims. Even in Akbar's court, who revoked jizya, a tax exclusively on Hindus, as a charge for practicing a non-Islamic faith, there were only 21 Hindus. Out of these 21, 17 were Rajputs, 1 was Brahmin, Birbal, and 2 Khatris, Todamal and his son. The larger masses of the Indian population had no say, no stakes to play in the Mughal rule. Taxation was oppressive, unlike earlier Hindu kings whose taxation as per books was limited at 1/6, Akbar took 1/3 of the produce as taxes. Soon after Akbar, the emperors once again lost all touch with the people and continued to indulge. Shah Jahan, the builder of Taj Mahal, as per Badshahnama, apparently ordered the demolition of 70 temples in Banaras. After the Great Famine of 1629 to 1632, which killed millions in Gujarat, the emperor was busy building his famous throne in 1634 AD, which was adorned with diamonds and rubies and costed crores and crores. Now, Aurangzeb's repressive and violent ways are known to everyone. Mirati Alam of Bakhtawar Khan mentions the policies of Aurangzeb when he writes that Hindu writers have been entirely excluded from holding public offices, and all the worshipping places of these infidels or kafir and all the great temples have been destroyed in a manner which excites astonishment. A Farman of 1679 orders to restart the campaign to demolish Hindu temples. On 2nd of April 1679, jizya was imposed once again on the Hindus. The opposition to the same was met with releasing elephants on protesting crowds. An imperial order dated 10th of April 1665 imposed custom duty on all material imported for resale at 5% for the Hindus and 2.5% for the Muslims. This collection was considered as zakat, only to be used on the welfare of Muslims. Another order dated 9th of May 1667 changed this to 0% for Muslims and 10% for the Hindus. Manucci notes that many Hindus who were unable to pay converted to Islam at this time. An order issued in March 1695 forbade all Hindus except Rajputs to ride palkis, horses or elephants. Carrying of arms was prohibited for the Hindus, and Shivaji wrote a passionate letter asking Aurangzeb to stop harassing Hindus, but his letter was ignored, paving way for huge discontent which waited for the empire to weaken a little. Now, much has been written about Bahadur Shah Zafar's contribution to the Indian freedom struggle and Sher Shah Suri's political principles. But the fact remains, they all treated India as any foreign warlord would. Also, most of them exhibited a split personality. The good was almost always offset with extremely random, unprovoked violence. They were either very sinister or lenient, scholarly and debauched at the same time. Cruelty was not uncommon to the Mughal women, as is evident in a recorded incident involving the beautiful queen Mumtaz Mahal. She once ordered complete erasure of a Portuguese Christian colony, a trading settlement near Hooghly in Calcutta. Even Shah Jahan was equally hateful of non-believers. It is known that up to the time of the British occupation of India, any non-Muslim who dared to enter the Taj Mahal, the one symbol of love by the Mughals, was put to sword. So largely in case of the Mughals, it seems like they came, they saw, they changed what they didn't like and met their eventual downfall due to their own decadence. Historian E.H. Carr famously called history an unending dialogue between the present and the past. He thus saw history to be relative, often influenced by when, how, and for whom it has been written. It's time we recentered the narrative.